An inexperienced caver endured an unimaginably slow death as he desperately screamed for help for hours while trapped between rocks. William J. Coughlin, who was 6 feet tall, ventured to Cave City in Kentucky, USA, for what was meant to be a one-day adventure with his 2 pals. But it ended in horror as he was squeezed to death by the rocks. 3 friends were excited to explore the cave they had wanted to visit for a long time. However, they didn't expect that their adventure would soon turn into a nightmare. You are watching Disaster Decode, and today we will decode the tragic incident of William Coughlin that happened in Buzzard Roost Cave on May 28, 1993. William Coughlin was 27 years old, an oak forest environmentalist and camping enthusiast. He loved to explore forests and go on adventures with his friends. His family and friends said that he had a special affection for animals. He joined the Federal Environmental Protection Agency because of his desire to save the environment. One of his friends introduced him to caving, and they both explored a small cave near his home. This cave was very simple, so they spent a few hours in it and enjoyed the experience with no issues. This incident boosted their confidence to explore even more technical caves. They had never seen cave accidents and were sure that nothing could go wrong while caving. Despite lacking knowledge about caving, William found it fascinating and wanted to explore more new caves. William asked his friends to go on another cave adventure. Even though they were new to caving and didn't know much about it, they were excited to face a difficult challenge. His friend James suggested a trip to Cave City in Kentucky, known for its diverse cave system. This was a perfect cave for them because it had attractions above and below the ground. On the surface, there were shops, restaurants, and a museum. But beneath, there were tons of caves for explorers. They picked Buzzard Roost Cave, as it looked the most exciting in the brochure. William and his friends embarked on the trip that would ultimately end in tragedy. But as with all great adventurers, it was his insatiable curiosity and drive to push the boundaries that led him to that ill-fated expedition. Can these beginners conquer the Buzzard Roost Cave, which has dangerous drops and tight spaces? You will get the answer soon. To start with, there were originally 2 tours. The first was the Easy Historic Tour for public exploration, and the second was the Wild Cave Tour, designed for professional cavers. They picked the Historic Tour first, which was a guided tour of the accessible parts of the cave. Before starting the tour, they had to sign a form warning them of the cave's dangers and stating that the guide would not be responsible for any mishaps inside the cave. Unfamiliar with the risk, they trusted the guide and signed it. William and James were eager to explore the cave even after knowing the risk. However, their friend Kevin decided to stay on the ground and explore local attractions. They successfully completed the historic tour with the guide, but they wanted to complete the Wild Cave Tour, which was more challenging and contained deep turns and tight spots. They entered the cave with 4 other cavers and the guide. The guide instructed all of them about the cave and gave them flashlights to carry along with them. Ordered everyone to follow him closely and explore it as he directed. He told them to stay closer and warned them about the cave's dangers. William and James decided not to go back as they had wanted to explore it for several months. The group slowly passed through the cave and reached the halfway point. They thought that it was not as difficult as they had been told. Hungry for adventure, they thought that the second half of the cave would be more challenging. The guide told them that they were now entering the lower part of the cave and needed to be more serious now. After crawling through a narrow passage, they reached a 30-foot hanging cable ladder with wooden rungs. The guide called out instructions as they descended, but the second ladder, shorter at 15 to 20 feet, posed more of a challenge due to its placement over a rocky outcrop. After the group descended the second ladder, the guide announced that the official tour had ended and they were free to explore nearby passages. However, he mentioned they were behind schedule and left them at the bottom of the ladder to make a quick phone call. William, intrigued by a passage he had seen earlier, decided to climb back up the second ladder to explore. James agreed, thinking they might find an unexplored part of the cave. William, tired and frustrated, found the ladder unsteady. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing around 220 pounds, he decided to wait for the guide and took a break. James suggested the other group members look for the guide, who had been gone for a while. Eventually, William decided to give the ladder another shot. As he climbed, his nerves got the better of him, and halfway up, he lost his grip and fell. The fall was brutal. He hit his head on a protruding rock before landing heavily on the cave floor. Blood began to pour from a 2-inch gash on his scalp. James, in shock, rushed to help his friend. Despite being conscious, William was delirious and unable to make sense of his surroundings, adding to the group's growing panic. James tried to calm William, assuring him they would get him out safely. When the guide finally returned, he insisted they would need to climb the ladders and exit the way they had come in. But William, badly injured and delirious, was in no condition to climb. The group feared for his life, knowing that every moment spent in the cave reduced his chances of survival. This infuriated James. He argued with the guide, insisting they needed a cave rescue team to get William out. The guide, however, stood firm, telling James that they and the group would have to work together to rescue William. James suspected the guide wanted to avoid causing panic among the many visitors above ground at the attractions. Reluctantly, the group agreed that their only option to get William out was to avoid the ladder and lead him through a narrow corridor marked on the brochures provided by the guide. This passage was never part of the adventure, but had been previously mapped and explored. They pushed and pulled, and to their surprise, they managed to overcome this major hurdle. But the real struggle lay ahead. The passage was rough and sharp, making it difficult to get a good grip. William entered the tight passage headfirst. He was afraid of getting stuck because his large body was barely fitting in the passage. Halfway through, William realized he couldn't move any further. He was against gravity and soon realized he needed help. He got stuck vertically, with his arms pinned under his body. The other members tried to pull him out, but the more they tried, the more he got stuck. James couldn't believe the view in front of him. It was a nightmare. Desperately, he used all his strength to pull William out, but it made the situation even worse. With each passing second, William was fighting against death. His lungs and diaphragm were squeezed, making it difficult for him to breathe. The guide told James to run towards the cave surface and explain the whole situation to the cave owner. But it was clear that the cave owner and guide didn't want to notify the authorities about it and wanted to handle the situation themselves. After doing all they could, they finally realized that they needed professionals to handle the situation. The guide finally alerted the authorities about the whole incident. But a few crucial hours passed before the medical and rescue personnel arrived. James did his best to comfort William, but was afraid that his friend might die inside the cave. William was unconscious and was not responding to James' question. Finally, the rescue team arrived at the point. They were shocked to see the position in which William was stuck. They worked tirelessly to rescue William. However, his downward angle made the situation worse. They used heat blankets to protect William from hypothermia as the cave temperature was decreasing. The rescuers helped the other tour members escape the cave, but James was still waiting for his friend to come out. The rescue team came up with the idea of a pulley system to pull William out, but each time they pulled him, caused William immense pain. Cave rescuers worked with all their efforts. They spent all Saturday trying to rescue William. They were confident that they could do this and save William. But tragedy struck, and William was declared dead by the medical team. It was already 17 hours after he got stuck. His friend James was in shock and couldn't believe that he had lost his friend. The whole rescue team felt sad about the incident, but they had to recover his body. It took almost 7 more hours to pull his body out. Using ladders and ropes, they pulled him out around 2:30 p.m. on Monday. The authorities found that the cave owner was aware of the risks, but had not added information about it in the form. It was made to excite cavers for the tour. Due to these mistakes made by the owner, William's family received compensation for the damages. But do you think that if the guide and the owners had notified the authorities immediately, William could have been alive?